This virus is really terrifying. Once someone is infected and goes outside, they can suddenly suffocate and die without any warning. The main character, Jason, had been staying at his office for the past few days because he argued with his wife. By chance, he escaped the first wave of attacks, but when he wanted to go home and apologize, he realized he had already been infected without knowing it. The virus spreads much faster than anyone imagined. The authorities didn't have time to respond, and society started falling apart. Those who survived were forced to stay inside reinforced concrete buildings. They were safe for now, but food and water were running out quickly. Jason's company had gathered many survivors. After digging for a full 3 months, they finally broke through the wall of a metro tunnel. This meant that people could now travel to any part of the city. Jason immediately thought of his wife at home, but the tunnel had no landmarks or signs, and all mobile signals were down. To get home, he needed GPS or satellite navigation. After searching for a long time, Jason finally found a car with navigation. Unfortunately, someone else had taken it first. After checking carefully, he realized the navigation had been taken by the company manager, Hank. Jason gathered courage and went to Hank's office. He asked to borrow the navigation to go home and be with his wife. He even offered some recently collected supplies as payment. But Hank wasn't interested in anything except a flashlight. No matter how much Jason persuaded him, nothing worked, so he had to use his last resort. Jason threatened to tell everyone about the navigation. Hank got furious, but eventually agreed to go with Jason. Once everything was ready, the two of them began their unknown underground journey. The metro tunnels had now become human shelters. The shortage of supplies was even worse. Catching a single mouse could make people happy for hours. They walked seriously into a metro station and found more survivors living there. It had become like a small market. Chaos and disorder filled the air. While they were distracted, a thief stole the backpack containing the navigation. Jason and Hank chased desperately through the crowded station, reaching the upper level, and realized the thief had accomplices. Jason tried to calm himself and reason with the leader, but the man showed a badge and a gun. Jason finally understood that civilization had already collapsed into jungle law. At the same time, the city's electricity completely failed. Hank attacked the leader first. Jason grabbed the navigation during the chaos. Suddenly, a gunshot rang behind them. Hank had killed the leader. Another shot took out the leader's subordinate. Seeing more people coming, Jason and Hank ran away quickly. Using the chaos of the crowd, they escaped their pursuers. After a short rest, they continued using the navigation. Jason noticed Hank was collecting all kinds of seeds. He was puzzled. Why collect seeds if no one can go outside? Hank smiled, but didn't answer. He checked the navigation and found a sewer route that could lead straight to Jason's apartment. Jason was extremely careful. He double-checked everything and finally located his apartment building. He prepared a gas cylinder and fixed it on a pipe. Hank took out the stolen pistol, but his arm was injured. He fired several times, but none of the shots hit the target. Seeing that only the last bullet was left, Jason grabbed the pistol. Even though he had no experience shooting, his strong determination gave him courage. After a shot, hot flames shot up into the air. When the smoke cleared, the expected hole appeared. The two of them climbed out of the sewer one after the other and found that many survivors were still living in the building. Jason felt a little relieved, but when he reached his own apartment door, he found the lock had been broken. Then, through the peephole, he saw a pair of strangers' eyes. Jason completely lost it. He kept pounding on the door with his hands. Finally, with Hank's help, they forced their way inside. The man inside was also very agitated. While both sides were tense, a mother and her daughter ran out from the bedroom. From the girl's explanation, they learned that the family of 3 had come here as refugees and stayed temporarily since the house was empty. Jason did not blame them. He asked about his wife. Seeing several people shake their heads, he sighed and went into the bedroom. There he unexpectedly found a medical report on the table. His wife was pregnant, and Jason had no idea. It reminded him of the early days of the virus outbreak. The news on TV reported infections everywhere, while Jason and his wife were discussing having a child. Jason thought having a child at that time was foolish. That comment had angered his wife completely, and they had a big fight. Jason thought his wife was being unreasonable, so he stormed off to work overtime at the company. That shift lasted all the way until the end of the world. During that time, he had called his wife, but it was always her friend who answered. Later, the phone signals completely failed, and the couple lost all contact. Jason spent the afternoon pretending to work while holding the medical report. One can imagine how heartbroken his wife must have been, filled with endless regret and guilt. Then Hank rushed in and reminded them that they had found drinking water. What seemed like ordinary rainwater had become a source of life in the apocalypse. After filling 2 large containers, Jason waved goodbye to the tenants. Since his wife was not there, he decided to go check her workplace, but Hank objected. Originally, The agreement was only to bring Jason home. Now the task was done, and Hank needed Jason's flashlight for his own purpose. Jason refused. His wife and unborn child were in danger, so he could not consider the agreement. The two of them immediately struggled, and the flashlight was accidentally broken. Then they gradually calmed down. Hank shared his feelings with Jason. His father had a stroke 3 months ago and was now lying in the city center hospital. He had left the company to take care of his father. Jason listened in silence and finally decided to accompany Hank to the hospital first, and then find his wife. But before that, they needed to deal with Zhao Ming's problem. In the dark, the two went to a church and were lucky to find some lighters. Just as they started a fire, a wild animal's roar came from behind. They grabbed sharpened sticks and went to check. The next moment, a brown bear slowly emerged from the shadows. The two ran in panic. In the chaos, Hank almost fell to the ground and seemed about to be killed. Jason, who had almost reached the door, paused for a few seconds. Then, with determination, he ran and stabbed the bear with the stick. Hank escaped the danger and picked up a torch to fight together, but Jason told him to throw the torch. Before the giant bear could attack, he used the floor for support and stood the stick upright. Jason is dead. Jason is dead. Jason is dead. Luckily, the person was just an ordinary refugee. Hank took the chance to ask for information and unexpectedly learned that the central hospital where his father was had caught fire. The man could hardly believe his ears. He ran as fast as he could toward the nearest exit and climbed to the top floor of the building in one breath. There, he saw the huge central hospital, now only filled with rolling smoke. Hank was completely desperate. He lifted a chair and smashed the window, feeling the strong wind rushing in. Hank decided to say goodbye to this cursed apocalypse. Jason was extremely nervous. He quietly approached while talking nonsense. As Hank's attention wandered, Jason jumped forward and pulled him back. Even though he saved Hank's life, it could not heal Hank's broken heart. After calming down, Hank took out the seeds he had collected along the way and said this was a continuation of hope, hoping Jason would preserve them carefully. Finally, Jason set off alone with the seeds and the navigation device. He passed through the underground parking and successfully reached the mall where his wife worked, but there were only a few scattered corpses and no living person in sight. In a hurry, he went to the bookstore run by his wife and her friend. Inside, it was a mess, and on the floor lay a decayed stranger's body. Jason did not give up and tried to find any clues about his wife. Finally, he saw a message on the mirror from his wife's friend to his mother. "We cannot leave. We can only go to the supermarket." Jason's hope was rekindled. He ran quickly towards the supermarket on the lower floor of the mall, but it had already been converted into a survivor camp. The guards were alert and treated him as an intruder. Jason quickly took out his wife's photo and explained that he was looking for someone. The leader was stunned, but vaguely remembered a pregnant woman had come before. He called his men to let Jason inside. Jason thanked them excitedly. Suddenly, a strange noise came from behind. He turned and lit a lighter. A pitch-black face appeared. Jason was terrified and fell to the ground. Countless thugs came out of the darkness, waving weapons towards the supermarket. A brutal, primitive fight for resources broke out. Jason did not know which side to go to, so he rushed inside the supermarket. He anxiously called his wife's name. Finally, he found his wife's friend in the crowd. He learned that when the disaster broke out, his wife had gone for a pregnancy checkup at a hospital not far from the mall. They ran outside the supermarket together, but burning beams fell from above and separated them. As the fire approached, the friend could only push open the rear door. The sunlight pouring in felt like a bloodthirsty beast. She thought of the terrifying virus and did not dare to step outside. Jason controlled his grief and went to find his wife. A thug knocked him to the ground. At the critical moment, Hank, like a divine soldier, pushed the thug away. Jason's eyes were full of gratitude, but the next moment, Hank was stabbed in the abdomen by a thug. He knocked the attacker down with one blow. Just as he was about to strike again, he stopped because it was only a child. Hank dropped the weapon and escaped with Jason. They headed towards the gynecology hospital using the map, but the only underground passage was completely blocked. Jason had to choose the nearest building to return to the surface. There was still a road separating him from his wife's hospital. To find his wife, he searched through glass windows, layer by layer, and finally found her. At the moment their eyes met, the couple cried tears of joy, but after a brief excitement, harsh reality stood in front of them. How could they cross that road? Jason wanted to ask Hank for a solution, but realized Hank was near death from blood loss. In his final moments, Hank told Jason, "You must go out through that gate. Someone is waiting for you there. Don't give up hope. No one knows what will happen next." After saying this, Hank closed his eyes forever. Jason calmed himself and nervously approached the door. Holding the seeds that represented hope, he resolutely opened the door. As he stepped onto the road, a strong sense of suffocation hit him. Soon, his mind started to blur. Every step felt like crossing 100,000 mountains, but his eyes never left the guidance. In the haze, Jason saw his wife's gentle smile. He thought it was an illusion, but he had truly crossed the road. Jason and his wife were finally reunited. Not long after, their child was safely born. The seeds Hank left had grown into fruits. Jason happily discovered that his child was not affected by the virus. Gradually, Earth seemed to start a new life cycle. All children born after the disaster could freely walk outside. But Jason and the other survivors who had endured so much were still trapped in concrete cages. Perhaps this was the true apocalypse. This seemingly absurd virus disaster was actually a backlash of civilization's evolution. Looking back, when we spend all day at home, scrolling on phones, building social lives online, and experiencing the world through screens, isn't that a form of self-imprisonment?